husband wet the bed, threw a tantrum and is now refusing to speak to me after I told our daughter the truth. I'm feeling confused and isolated. This morning, I, 28F, woke up because the sheets I was sleeping on were damp. I believed our 6-year-old daughter had been in an accident, but to my amazement, it was not her. My husband had wet the bed. After showering, I woke him up and informed him what had happened. He initially denied it, but eventually acknowledged he had peed the bed. He sprang out of bed, horrified, and began ripping off the blankets. Because our kid was still asleep on the opposite side, he couldn't get them off, which I found amusing. He became angry and told me it wasn't amusing, so I stopped. The only thing his yanking off the sheets did was wake up our daughter, who was perplexed, and inquired what was going on. He didn't say anything, and kept fumbling with the sheets. When he didn't respond, I informed her that he had wet the bed. He froze and gave me an odd expression, like if he was about to cry or something. Our daughter inquired why he had soiled the bed, and because he was still silent, I calmly explained that accidents do happen. He just stood there, staring at me with a lethal expression. I am not exaggerating when I say he looked at me with utter hatred. I've never been terrified of him, but for a moment, I thought he was going to hit me. Then he dropped the bedding on the floor, exited the room and locked himself in the bathroom for nearly 45 minutes. When he came out, he quickly changed and went, saying, "You can take her to school." He did not even look at me. I was annoyed by his behavior, but I let it go since I didn't want to dispute with him when he was in such a foul attitude. However, when I returned home from work, he was still brooding and ignored me. I was still annoyed by his conduct, so I told him to get over it. That wetting the bed wasn't the end of the world, and stop taking it out on me. At this point, he accused me of humiliating him in front of our daughter. I thought that claim completely ludicrous on so many levels, so I furiously reminded him that he disgraced himself by wetting the bed, not I. He did not take it well, shouted at me and walked off to his computer. Now he won't talk to me, and I'm bewildered. I believe he was the one who acted inappropriately and immaturely, and I do not believe I did anything wrong. Maybe my last comment was harsh, but I believe he deserved it. Still, I'm wondering if I was too mean. Edit 1. I simply wanted to clarify that I did not advise our daughter to be mean or disgrace my husband. I informed her since I didn't know what else to say and it was very evident what had occurred. I felt it was best to be honest. I didn't say it in a humiliating way, but rather casually and without making a huge issue about it. I didn't expect my hubby to feel this horrible about it. Edit 2. For whatever reason, someone shared a link to a claim about my husband having cancer, which is false. Neither my husband nor I have cancer. Update 1. I reviewed my original post and realized that I needed to elaborate before providing an update. I felt empathy and cared for my hubby. I spoke gently to him after waking him up. However, his reaction caught me off guard and it couldn't have taken more than a minute for him to hop out of bed and lock himself in the bathroom. After that, I thought it was best to leave him alone. I realize I was wrong for informing our child, but I didn't do it to be mean or embarrass him. It was a stupid and terrible decision, and I regret it. Furthermore, it is difficult to show someone you care while they are being neglected. I contacted him after he left to see if he was okay, but he left it as read. I inquired again when I came home, but there was still no response. I asked if we could discuss it. Again, no reaction. I asked if he could explain why he was so angry with me, but he didn't say anything. I gave up and went to prepare dinner. After supper, I implored him to quit ignoring me. No response. When I inquired if he wanted me to leave, he said, "You can stay. I don't care." So I asked him again whether he'd stop ignoring me if I stayed, and when he answered no, I was done. While I don't think it's fair to ignore someone like that, I know I handled it horribly, and I feel terrible for being so nasty to him. Anyway, I texted him early this morning to apologize and to see if he was available to talk after work. Around midday, he texted me okay. We met at home, and he was obviously cool, and spoke little. I apologized for everything, for laughing, for informing our child, for asking him to get over it, and for the most shameful part, telling him he disgraced himself. He remained silent the entire time, and after I finished, he just questioned why I had told our child. I explained, and then we sat in silence for what seemed like eternity. Then unexpectedly, he said, "I scared you, right?" I told him that short, and he did. He claimed he could feel it. I inquired what caused him to react so aggressively, but he didn't know. He simply said he panicked when he realized he had soiled the bed, and it grew worse when I told our child. He stated he was furious with me for it. I apologize again for making him feel this way, and he apologized for scaring me. I'm not going to go over everything we said. After that, it was a long conversation. To summarize, neither of us is pleased with how we behaved, and we both apologized for it. He wasn't as outraged as I had assumed about my laughter, but we agreed I shouldn't have informed our child. However, he is no longer upset about it and does not consider it to be a significant concern anymore. We both agreed that he shouldn't have neglected me in that manner, and I handled it horribly and harshly. We have accepted each other's apologies, but I still feel guilty about being so rude to him. Update 2. To begin with, because there were questions regarding why my husband peed the bed while sober, I attempted to persuade him to see a doctor after so many of you suggested it, but he flatly refused, stating it was meaningless because they would do nothing regardless. He's wet the bed once before, and both times he was weary and stressed out, so that could have been the cause. I'm not sure. This is becoming long, so if you simply want to read about my spouse divorcing me, you can stop right now. My second post was composed shortly after I had apologized. Based on the initial replies to my first post, I assumed that I must be a bad person and felt sorry for him. But to be honest, I never thought my original actions were particularly awful, and I still don't. That is not to say that I did not deserve some of the hate I received. I certainly did, but some of it was simply filthy, and some of the things I was reviled for never occurred, save in the minds of commenters. I felt terrible since the effect of my actions was so dreadful, despite the fact that I had no intention of hurting him. So the apology was genuine, and by the time of the second post, I was relieved we were on speaking terms, and hoped we could put this behind us. It turned out that I couldn't. Shortly after, I realized I was still concerned by his actions. I also began to receive more remarks from people who noticed problems with his, which I appreciate because it confirmed to me that it was most likely serious. What I purposefully left out of my first post in order to get unbiased feedback was the fact that my hubby can be unstable at times. He can be immature and sensitive, struggles to regulate his emotions, particularly rage, and is sometimes difficult to understand. It's probably due to mental health concerns, which isn't fair to him, and I feel terrible about it. But sometimes I just find him annoying and exhausting. I guess I was called out for it in my first post. He'd been in contact with a mental health team for years, but if they hadn't prescribed his prescriptions, he would have stopped seeing them long ago. Anyway, I was getting weary of constantly catering to his mood swings and failing to confront his concerns. So his exaggerated and, in my mind, threatening reaction to our child peeing the bed and me notifying him felt like too much, even though I knew he was hurt. As I mentioned, I had never been intimidated by him before, so it bothered me, even though he did nothing. I tried to talk to him about what happened again, particularly why he became so angry that I felt intimidated. I even questioned him whether it had anything to do with him peeing the bed as a child, based on some suggestions in the comments about him being shamed for it. He simply stated that it did not, and it was evident that he did not want to discuss any of it, so I did not press. He's tough to talk to about feelings or relationship concerns, which may be really irritating for me. To be honest, I had some reservations about staying in this marriage, but they were not severe at the moment. Then around a week before Christmas, he made an unexpected suicide attempt, which was unfortunately not his first. I didn't see it coming and I still feel terrible about it. Probably always will. His recall of the proceeding hours is hazy, but he insists that he did not mean to harm himself when he left our house that night. But I should have known. It was bad, and we didn't know if he'd make it or in what condition. Fortunately, he lived, but with no long-term consequences. The aftermath was terrible, and when he returned home, he was really ill, lethargic for weeks. The quick answer to why he did it is that he obviously had an excessive amount of anxiety that he wanted to escape, along with his occasional complete lack of impulse control. He made it obvious that it had nothing to do with anything I had done. I had no idea how horrible he was feeling because he did not inform me or anyone else. It's very difficult to help him when he won't tell us how he feels. It terrified me, and it scared him as well, to the point where he knew he needed more support. He's taken it more seriously than he ever has before. When he was offered therapy, he accepted. Now that the wait time is ludicrous, he will begin in October. In the interim, he has been visiting a nurse and a psychiatrist. By April, he was back to normal and he returned to work in early May. Then we discovered I was pregnant. It was unintentional and the result of a birth control error on our part. Despite all of the obvious reasons why we should have terminated the pregnancy, we chose to continue with it. We didn't take this decision lightly, but it was what we wanted. I should mention that he was a complete mess throughout my first pregnancy, and the second, we have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, was equally difficult for him. But for some reason that escapes me now, we expected things to be different this time around, and it was for a time. At 12 weeks, we discovered that there were actually 2 babies. I know it's bad, but I'd be lying if I said we were delighted about it at first. However, by that time, we had already decided to have a baby, so we both agreed to proceed with it. After digesting the news, we became quite enthused about it. I'm 23 weeks pregnant, and things had been going well until yesterday. When he arrived home from work, he was unhappy. I assumed he had a hard day at work, but when I questioned about it, he responded with an angry diatribe about how dumb we were for having the babies and how we should have terminated them. I was stunned, and when I asked why he was saying that and pointed out that it wasn't a good thing to say, he just said, "Well, you asked, and it's what I feel." I didn't want to talk to him while he was like that, so I told him we'd talk later, when the kids were asleep. When they were done, I asked him what it was all about and where it came from. He said he didn't know, like he does when he doesn't want to discuss something. I tried to push a little but went nowhere. I was frustrated and told him it wasn't fair to say such things and then refused to discuss them. He remained silent for a long time before saying, "Expletive this," and locking himself in the restroom. When he came out, he appeared depressed. I inquired whether he was all right, and he indicated he needed some air. I assured him it was all right to feel sad. However, he objected and vehemently stated that he was not sad. I know I should have let him go, but I had a horrible feeling. I requested him to remain, but he didn't like it and screamed that he didn't want to expletive stay before slamming the door so violently that the kids woke up. After he departed, all I could do was tend to the children, pretend everything was well and hope he returned safely. I was very worried. When the kids fell back asleep, I contacted him to see if he was okay, and then I cried. He responded almost immediately with, "I'm okay. I'll be home at 5, sorry. I love you," which relieved some of my anxiety, but I remained unhappy and angry. He returned shortly afterwards, definitely high but calmer. He is not addicted, but he does use it occasionally. When he noticed I was crying, he apologized. I told him I wasn't good with him treating me that way, and we had the same talk we'd had before, him apologizing and me explaining how hurt I was. At that point, I realized I wasn't even angry anymore, though I probably should have been. I simply asked him not to run away like that again. He said he wouldn't, but deep down I know he will. We went to bed after that, but I was unable to sleep. To be honest, I haven't felt fantastic today. I'm terrified, disappointed, and feel extremely dumb. When my husband arrived home today, he was in a better mood. He was such a sweetheart. He even spoke to me. He apologized for yesterday and expressed disappointment in himself for his actions. He stated he's been working so hard to act like a normal person. His words, and is weary of failing all the time. I know he's trying and doesn't always fail, so I advised him not to be too hard on himself. I asked how he was feeling, and he replied that he wasn't feeling well, but he couldn't clarify. When I inquired how horrible not well was, he stated it wasn't too bad, and I shouldn't worry. He promised to let me know if things grew worse, but I'm not sure I can trust him. I'm terrified he'll crash again, and I'm not sure I have the energy for it right now. I am quite sure he doesn't either. I really hope that treatment will benefit him, but I'm not sure what we can realistically anticipate from it. What if it doesn't make any difference? What should we do then? I know my posts have primarily focused on the negative, so it may not appear that way, but I adore my hubby. I don't want to live without him, but I also don't want to live this way. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm just excessively sensitive right now, being pregnant and all. Now to the next story. Story 2. Boss reprimanded me for not answering an email in 4 minutes. Now I'm wondering if I should quit due to her unreasonable demands. I've been at my new job for just over a month and have very grave doubts about whether it's going to work out. I'm finding it impossible to make my supervisor, Martha, happy. Her criticism is frequent, harsh, and in my opinion, often very unreasonable. The incident that has me writing to you happened today, when she reprimanded me in writing for failing to answer an email in 4 minutes to set the scene. Earlier this week, Martha and my other boss, I support 2 teams, but it's an uneven split. Unfortunately, my primary boss is the awful one, had a meeting with me in which Martha told me all the things I was doing wrong and what needed to change. I'm trying to understand where she's coming from, but I'm just not used to a work situation like this. She proudly describes herself as a micromanager. She doesn't appear to know the word has a negative connotation, and is looking for constant immediate responsiveness over communication, her words, and accountability. I understand she's the boss, and it's her call, but it's a hard adjustment. I'm not used to being watched so closely. Every job I've had, the boss has been concerned with results, not with knowing exactly where I am every minute, hearing back from me instantly, etc. All week, I've worked so hard to keep her happy and show her that I took the conversation to heart. Then today, I received an email in which Martha was CC'd from a senior partner asking for contact info for one of our clients. I saw the email come in while I was working on a project for the other boss. I made the apparently grave error of not stopping instantly, but instead finished up the line in the Excel sheet I was working on, then opened the email and began gathering the requested info. Before I had finished, Martha replied to both of us, sending the partner the requested information, the wrong information for the record, but I'll get to that later. I saw her email, which arrived in my inbox a whopping 4 minutes after the email from the partner. Stopped working on my response since it was no longer necessary, and went back to the project I'd been working on. Then I get an email from Martha. Jane, this would have been a great opportunity to build a relationship with the partner. Why didn't you dive in and assist? 4 minutes, Allison. 4 minutes. A bathroom break can take 4 minutes. I just feel like she's determined to hate me. I tried so hard all week to do everything exactly the way she likes, and she still found something to criticize. If she wanted me to answer the email, why didn't she give me a grace period of, maybe 5 minutes before answering it herself? Also, as I said earlier, she gave him the wrong information. He asked for the email address and she gave the physical address, which to me seems like she was so eager to answer the email, so that she could blame me for not answering it, that she rushed and sent the wrong info. By the way, if I sent incorrect information to a partner, she would act like it was the end of the world, but it's no big deal when she does it. Also, for the record, I understand some things are very time sensitive. I still think 4 minutes is kind of a stretch for almost any situation, but I also want to make it clear. This was not an urgent request. It could have waited 5, maybe even, 10 minutes. I'm not asking whether my boss is being reasonable here. I'm very confident that she isn't. My question to you is, do you think I should start looking for a new job? I just feel like this is such an unreasonable criticism that there's no way I'm ever going to make this person happy. She either has no idea how to manage people or has developed an instantaneous hatred for me and will continue to find things to criticize, no matter how hard I try. I've been so stressed out since I started this job, worrying about messing up, which not surprisingly, is probably leading me to mess up more. Is this salvageable or should I start looking for an escape plan? Update. Your response was really helpful. Martha had already fucked with my head so much that she really had me doubting myself. So much so that I honestly thought you might take her side and ask me, but why did it take you 4 whole minutes to answer the email? So for you in the commenters to reassure me that yes, she was being unreasonable was really helpful. As for an update. Reader, she fired me. Yes, I took your advice and started looking for a new job. She fired me before I could find one. The 4-minute email happened about a month after I started and I got fired just under the 3-month mark. The reason given was that I was making too many mistakes and that they couldn't trust me with my assignments. I'm curious how it's going with my replacement. If things like accidentally saving a draft to the wrong folder in your first month at a new job qualify as fireable offenses. I mess up sometimes more than I normally do, but I think it's because of how Martha treated me. She was so volatile that I didn't feel comfortable asking questions, and she also would just disappear fairly often. She can disappear for 3 hours. I'm in trouble for missing a phone call because I was using the restroom. So a lot of times I had to make my best guess. And yes, amazingly, my best guess was always wrong. She was always coming after me with artificially compressed deadlines, so I usually had to send her work without having the amount of time I'd prefer to proofread, double check, etc. Sometimes I thought she was moving the goalposts. Often she would say, I told you to do X not Y, and I'd think, though I'd never say it out loud lest I face her wrath, I don't think you did actually. And sometimes it was 100% clear that she was just inventing reasons to berate me. See, for example, 4-minute email. When I got the email that I wrote to you about, I knew deep down that she was just never going to let up. Clearly, she would find something to criticize whether I did something wrong or not, and in the end probably fire me or bully me until I quit. That played out many times in the weeks before my firing. If I made a minor mistake, she lost her mind. If I didn't make a mistake, she would invent one. For example, she would email me to say things like, the meeting has been over for 30 minutes. By this point, you should have emailed me to ask what our next steps are. Maybe, but see above hesitancy to initiate contact with a volatile boss who finds fault with everything I say or do. I absolutely couldn't win, and it was just a horrible, stressful, demoralizing experience. The good news is that I did find another job that I'm much happier with, though the first few weeks were very tough as I tried to put the experience with Martha behind me. I was afraid to ask questions, thought I was about to be fired every time I made a mistake, etc. But as time went by, and it became clear to me that I was now working with reasonable people, it got much better. While I didn't get out in time, I'm grateful for you and the commenters, because, as I said, it helped me to keep some perspective in the face of a person doing her best to destroy my faith in my basic competency. I really wish this hadn't happened to me, and while I'm happy in my new job, and it's a bump in both title and salary, I actually now have Martha's job title. Seriously, suck it, Martha. I would never say it happened for a reason or that I'm grateful for it in any way. The fact that someone could bully me like this, be 100% in the wrong, fire me, and get away with all of it is really hard to accept. But all I can do is look forward. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real life stories happening around you.